All right, we're live on YouTube apparently. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Marine mentioned this last time. I hadn't used this before. It kind of makes it easier to manage the recordings as well because I had recorded just to my local machine early, and then you to wait for Zoom to let the encoding finish. I need to upload it to YouTube. I don't know where if it's gonna sort it into a playlist somewhere. Probably not. So I might have to do that afterwards. But yeah. So welcome to the Object Storage Working Group Sync. This is the Americas, is that right? This is the APAC meeting. And we have a bunch of agenda items actually today. So let's just jump right in. We had a couple action items well, actually, let me share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at. There we go. So you should be seeing the agenda document now. We had a couple action items from last week and just like general, check-ins around progress as well. I know, yeah, David, you had worked on, the active storage POC and looking into how we could potentially replace carrier wave. Do you want to talk about this a little?
Yeah, I think we can close the active storage MR. I will leave it open for comments, discussion, I guess 1 week, and then I will close it. So it brought the answers I was seeking, which is we can't use active storage directly, but the concepts the concepts used by active storage are quite powerful and flexible, and we should strive to have a custom approach implementation around that. One example is the attach API. So I would say that the next step here would be, might be a good idea to have, another quick POC, but around the custom implementation, just to have a feeling of how hard it could be to build this.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it sounds like active storage follows a pretty good design, was my understanding. So we can probably, be inspired from its design, but like specifically to use it with GitLab as it stands would be quite tricky because there's a lot of workarounds we would have to use. Is that correct?
The main blocker is that we have some database decomposition needs, which is we need to store things in different tables, even though they are the same things, such as the attachments and blobs. And this is completely out of scope for active storage. And that's why there is a lot of overrides and hacky code, we can say that around active storage to support those different tables. But at some point, they might implement the option to define and target whichever table you want from active storage directly. And so it's not like out of the imagination that perhaps one day we could use active storage, but not as it currently is. So I would rather have something really close to active storage so that we could migrate to it if one day it's possible.
Did you actually happen to talk to the folks from the database shard? I think it's called working groups, database scalability working group now or something. The people that were looking at sharding the database might just be an interesting like finding to pass by them, that this is causing problems with active storage, or that maybe, I don't know, whatever solution they're working towards that would be good if that would work with active storage in the future. Would that make sense just to loop them in? Is that too early?
I don't think so, because active storage is really, you have two tables for the whole application. And this will not work for us since one day we can split the tables in different databases. And well, I guess the upload tables should go with the other tables. So one example is the actual decomposition, which is happening for the CI tables. I don't think you want the uploads for CI being in one database and then the rest of the business models in another one. I don't think that's a good idea.
Right.
It should be all together. So they would need their own active storage or attachments and blobs tables with them. And that's the whole thing. We need several tables.
All right. Would it be useful to track a new issue for building out like a custom solution in a POC, or would we just do that in the same issue? I don't really have a preference.
Yeah, I would rather have everything in the same place, because in the end, it's the same goal, which is removing carry weave.
Yeah, sounds good. That's great. Let's just I'm just going to take the same note for next week and just check in again, see where we are next week. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. All right. And any questions about this, or should we move on to the next item? All right. Yeah, this one I had added, I think I had meant to talk about this last time, and I think I forgot. So I moved it to this week's sync. We had this nice requirements table that Gregor had put together. And this is just a super quick question. If there was anything we should do for this now. Where's the table actually? I think it was a Google sheet, but you've probably all seen it, right? I think it might be down here. Yeah, whatever. I can't find it right now. But the last status update I remember was that we had meant to like vote on complexity, but we kind of said like most people didn't feel super comfortable like voting on this because it's really hard to get a sense of complexity there. So should we just like, I don't know, park this for now and wait until we feel a bit more comfortable with understanding the complexities behind this whole problem space, which I hope, you know, will be improved by working on things like, you know, the documentation and refactoring issues that we have. Is that kind of is everyone on board with this, or any other ideas like what we could still be doing there? I'm asking because like we always need to decide, you know, when should we close out an issue, or do we want to like keep it open for a while longer?
Perhaps the documentation issue, so point C on the agenda, is the requirement for this one.
Yeah, it feels like it. Yeah.
We should know more precisely the needs of GitLab, and given the amount of different configurations we need to support, yeah, we should have more knowledge on that before stating any score on any aspect of the upload refactoring.
Yeah, I personally feel the same, like having I spent some time in the guts of Workhorse last week to understand how the uploads are handled, and it is quite complex, right? So I was actually a bit surprised even, and I definitely think as well that you know, after we like kind of dive into this more and just get a sense of what's going on currently, and then writing it down, it will be easier to then gauge as well how much work would something be if we were to improve a certain aspect of it. Yeah, I hope others feel similarly. Like for me, so I started looking at Workhorse more at the moment. I'm still pretty fuzzy on the whole Rails side of things, because there's also then different things that can happen within Rails, right? Also depending on which path we took on Workhorse. Yeah, I hope, yeah, that's actually a good segue into this anyway. So let me just talk about this. So we had like one issue here about just looking at, we had started to, so basically the reason I created this issue was because when I first looked at the stuff outside of reading the blueprint and the main working group page, was to just see what we have in terms of documentation around developer documentation, I should say, for how to implement uploads. And like coming to this, like not having implemented an upload before, I found that we could probably improve this. And it seems also we adopted a certain language in this document here. which is around things like direct uploads, but also accelerating uploads using disk buffering. So my first intuition was, well, let's just look, at Workhorse and Rails and see where these are implemented. And I found this difficult because like a lot of these terms weren't really present in the code base. So it was hard to connect the dots, right? So I think one thing we could do was to make this a bit more exhaustive and provide specific examples and control flows of like how certain uploads are handled, and then also reflect the language back and forth between the code base and the documentation. So if we use terms like disk buffering here, like what does that mean exactly? Where is that implemented in Workhorse, and when exactly does that trigger? And another idea I had was or a suggestion was, I feel like there's a lot of historic information here around like kind of like how did we get here, or like what was the case in the past. Like this is not the status quo anymore, right? Yeah, you can see what I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at the good, yeah, good. So I was thinking maybe it would be good to split this up into like a high-level description of what the challenges are with uploading large files or files in general. And this could very well contain, because these diagrams are useful, right? To get like an understanding of like what are the complexities. But as a developer, if I need to implement an upload endpoint, I don't need to read this every single time, right? So I think it's good to have, but maybe we could move this out of the developer docs and or like move it to the side, kind of, like here, if you want to read a bit more about like why it is the way it is, this is the stuff you would find there. And look, if you look at the index, like how to actually work with uploads is like the last item in this list. I think that's not, and because if I want to like know what to do now to solve the problem I have, which is implementing an upload, like this is the stuff I'm interested in, right? So I think this should be front and center for the developer docs, and we can just then link maybe some of these more historic things, especially if they don't even happen anymore, right? Like this specific diagram here, and I misunderstood when I read this. This doesn't even happen anymore, right? So this is what Rails would do by default if Workhorse wasn't involved, right? Or if it would just forward it. So I find this a bit confusing because why do I need to know this if that's not a problem anymore, right? Yeah. So this was kind of my main idea behind this, and then make sure that we use like interfaces that really tell me what they're doing. We have things like upload that accelerate, but it can mean anything, right? Accelerate how? What are we accelerating here? And some of these things, I think, focused more around actually what we call the content or upload encoding in this documentation here. We have a section on upload encodings where we discern between, is this a form data request, or is this just a blob in the body that we upload, or something else? So I think these code switches in Workhorse are at the top level are mostly around this. So yeah, there's some weird dichotomies here that aren't really dichotomies. So I would, yeah, these are the things I think we could just improve with naming and just make it a bit easier for newcomers to the code base to understand what these things are doing here. Yeah, so Patrick picked this up. That's awesome. You probably haven't worked on it yet, but I saw you. I sent it to yourself just yesterday, I think. So yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about it.
I agree with all the things that you said. I mean, I was looking at it earlier as well when you quote things. It's like, okay, thanks. And
yeah,
look
great.
at the accelerate functions. Like, okay, I guess it's not really clear. So, yeah.
Right. And by the way, like this was just like my personal take. Feel free to like, do we use your own best judgment for like how this should be named, or like where to move things, especially since I haven't spent that much time in Workhorse. So don't take this as like a spec for something, right? It's just an idea or one suggestion.
Yep, makes sense.
All right, excellent. What else do we have? All right. This was I don't have the issue linked here. I think this was the issue about so we noticed that we had started to categorize object storage buckets and how they were assigned to like certain features in GitLab and the respective code owners. But we very quickly realized that this is a moving target and we had closed up the issue. And basically the table that we had produced was already out of date. I think Marine made a good suggestion that, well, maybe we shouldn't just, put that in a spreadsheet and or put it in a markdown table in the issue and then close the issue, because then it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and it won't get updated. So we said we're going to do two things. The first thing should be to extract these tables that we created for which parts of the code base are kind of assigned to which object storage bucket or feature that is attached to it, and also how does it integrate with Carrier Wave. And we just turn that into developer documentation. And I made my life very simple here, and I just put it into the document we just looked at as a new section. That was the most obvious place to put it now. I'm totally fine with revisiting this as part of the bigger documentation overhaul. I just wanted to like get that fixed quickly so that we can put this link in front of other developers and remind them to keep this table updated. So that's just this small MR that I opened. And it's just waiting for a copy review. So, but nothing surprising in here. I just added this new section and developer docs for uploads. Yeah, and that's verbatim like what we had in the issue. Actually, like now that I'm looking at this, I had it on the agenda later anyway. Patrick had raised a good question. We have this distinction here between the different kind of like who's the actor, like when we upload, right? Is it Workhorse, like going directly to object storage, or is it some like other tool like GitLab Runner or whatever, or is it the controller? And then we have the uploader is Sidekick. I think that means and correct me here if I'm wrong, that if it is handled by Carrier Wave, it has this this helper in the model which says this is kind of the attachment, and this will trigger a job in Sidekick that actually performs the upload. But I could be wrong here, so I'm happy to be corrected. So the question was basically, what does it mean if Sidekick is the uploader? But yeah, if anyone wants to take this question, I'd be happy to let someone else answer that.
Yeah, I mean, my guess was the other way around. It's like it's Sidekick that's triggering the upload, and Carrier Wave will upload it.
Ah, interesting. Okay, I'm not totally sure.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
To my limited knowledge on uploads, I would think that this is an upload that is started by a background job, and so it's directly using the Rails part to upload anything, and that's why we have Carrier Wave.
Right. So is Sidekick just the thing that triggers the upload? That I guess like during the upload, where's the time spent? Is that during a web transaction in Rails or during Sidekick? I guess maybe that's the kind of the core of the question, right?
I'm not sure, but I recall hearing multiple times that we have uploads that are, I guess, the file is built in a background job and it is uploaded by a background job. So you don't have any web request around this. The job might be triggered by a web request, that could be possible, but the whole upload is done by the background job. And that's
okay,
why
so it is in the background job. Okay.
And that's why we need, if we change things around, we need a way to upload any kind of file from the Rails side, from the background job. And that's why in the attach API, it's really important to have this API where you can pass an IO object and it will upload the IO object. because not all our uploads are web requests, actually.
Mm. Yeah, if you look at these combinations here as well, it seems like carrier wave seems to always imply sidekick, but not necessarily the other way around. So the way I would read this is that if there is an upload that is not a direct upload handled by workhorse and carrier wave handles it, that this triggers the sidekick job that then performs the actual work that transmits the file to object storage. There is one case here where we also schedule the upload on Sidekick, but it's not triggered by carrier wave, which is using Fog, which is this Ruby library, I believe, around object storage providers, right? But
yeah,
I'm not sure about this.
But carrier wave will use Fog as
interesting. Okay.
Fog is just it's like an adapter API for object right. storage providers. So instead of directly calling the S3 gem or the Google Cloud Storage gem, you just use Fog, and it's like unified API, and then
kind of like an adapter around.
Yeah, exactly. It will translate the calls. That's the whole thing.
So I guess this case then means carrier wave is just not involved at all in the transaction.
Yeah, I guess in this case they kind of shortcut carrier wave, and they directly used Fog directly.
Maybe because they don't need an entry in the attachments table or something. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, this is exactly why we're looking to document this more, right? I think this was a good start because it gives you a very nice overview of the overall kind of landscape of what features do we have and kind of what kind of work are they performing. But then, yeah, the specifics around what actually happens, in the backend. That's kind of the next step that we're still working on. So maybe we can just keep this question in mind when we work on documentation to also document the Rails side a bit better. Like, what are the different paths, like the different control flow that can trigger if the request is handed off from workhorse to Rails to finish the upload and see what's going on there exactly. Yeah, so this one is already answered then. Well, we didn't quite answer it, but I think it will become clearer. I would just say, let's keep digging into this, document it, and it'll become clearer over time. I want to go back to this quickly because this merge request here that adds documentation, that's only the first step, right? I mean, but just having this documentation doesn't mean it's maintained. What I was struggling with a bit is how can we make sure this keeps being updated? So we just had a case where I forgot which team it was. They had to add configuration for a new bucket, which should have an entry here, right? So I want to get this MR merged ASAP so I can actually go back to that team and tell them, hey, look, we're documenting these things. And it's kind of a moving target. Could you just add, a line here around the stuff you just added? But that's not a sustainable approach, right? Because we can't constantly stay on top of what is happening around the org. And so if you have any ideas around how we could prompt developers there, I looked a little bit at the MRs they sent out to actually add support for a new object storage bucket. And it's a couple of repositories you need to touch to add this configuration, right? Including the GDK for, because we have these unified object storage settings, but then we also support the per bucket settings, right? Where you can then enable, whatever direct upload and stuff like per bucket. So you need to touch like the GDK chart, the GitLab chart, and Omnibus. And yeah, I'm not totally sure like where in this workflow we would hook into to kind of notify developers that, hey, look, you're adding a new bucket. Please document it here, right? So that we know what's going on. Does anyone have any ideas like how we could go about that?
Could we use a danger rule for this?
Yeah, you mean in one of these repositories? Like if they touch a certain directory or file? Yeah.
We have some rules in Rails, like if you add a new Sidekick job, you have a bunch of comments from the bot. Could we have something similar
Yeah, I think that
upload.
sounds like the right approach. I'm just wondering what the trigger is. How do we find out that you're adding a new object storage bucket?
That will be on the DRI for implementing the danger rule.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe we can just document for now, like part of the uploads documentation. Like if we're going to add a new bucket like this, I mean, I'm assuming that the developer will read the documentation first before they touch the code base.
Yes, that's a good point. I hope I actually mentioned this here. I forgot what I wrote. Yeah, I kind of do here. I don't know if that's like kind of noticeable enough. I can maybe also highlight this more or something. I'm just saying here, we ask new uploads to be documented by slotting them into the following tables. It's not the final copy maybe, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can also put it into a call out, these like notices that stand out a bit more to, but it should be just below the implementation guide. So I hope this is fairly visible. We could just like, I mean, we're definitely going to do this anyway. First, get this documentation and see if it works. And if it doesn't, I guess we can still decide to come up with something more clever.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like how often does a developer add a bucket? So
Not
it's
that
like,
often,
yeah. So it's like if we add more changes, maybe
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe writing an extra tool around this might not be worth the time invested. Yeah. Yeah, okay. All right, let's just get the documentation out then and go from there. I think it's a good start. All right, then we only have one more item and we have 2 minutes. So, David, you picked this up, but you haven't started on it. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything about it. This is about looking into a single authorization endpoint rather than having one per integration, basically.
Yeah, I didn't started working on this. And yeah, this week is the last week of the milestone, so an interesting week. I have some concerns around this because it has to be flexible, but at the same point, we don't want to handle everything in the giant API endpoint. So I wrote it directly on the issue. But yeah, I think the POC will bring more answers to these questions.
Yeah. Sounds great. I mean, it sounds like the right approach, and we'll just see how bad it gets, basically. And usually, like, that's exactly the point where you discover all of the hidden complexity, right? Of these kind of things, like, oh yeah, we didn't really think about this, and then see kind of what falls out of this.
It's about making sure that we are not looking at an iceberg and saying, oh, this is very, very small. No, it isn't.
Yeah, right. Okay, good. So there aren't too many action items, but we have a couple ongoing things. So I think maybe next week we can just check back in on status updates and see how we are progressing. Cool. That's exactly on time then. I'm gonna stop sharing and